Namaste and welcome to Boom of Bharat with Rama Shiv Kumar, where we're bringing you the latest updates and insights on global capability centers each week. We dive into key trends, key expert opinions, and transformative ideas that shapes the industry. Today is a special episode as we kick off our first podcast series featuring guest speakers. And we couldn't have asked for a better guest to start with. But before I introduce you to the guest speaker, let me tell you, our listener, what SRK Game Changers is all about. At SRK Game Changers, we deliver customized, high performing global capability centers. We leverage the expansive skilled talent pool. We groom the next generation leaders. We provide the workplace solutions and make GCC an indispensable part of the corporations. We believe in disrupting the status quo, much like Avarjit has done throughout his career. I still remember my first day at American Express, where I had the privilege of meeting him. What stood out immediately was his down to earth nature, sharp business acumen, and pursuit of innovation. Over the years, I have not only learned from him, but also been mentored by him. And that's a privilege I deeply cherish. Avajit, welcome to the podcast, and it's an absolute pleasure to have you here. Let's dive right in.
Thank you. Thank you, Rava. Thank you for having me on your podcast.
So, Avajit, before we start, to set the stage, could you introduce yourself to our audience? Tell us little about your journey and your experience in the GCC space.
Sure. Hello, everyone. My name is Avarjit Singh. I'm a chartered accountant by training and have been working in the BPO industry since January 1996. I know some of you will fall off your chairs when you hear the year 1996. Hopefully, some of you would have been born by that year. But yeah, that's when we started this journey. I started this journey. This was within American Express, of course. Within the BPO world, I've had the good fortune, to run call centers, technical help desk, email and chat support, as well as finance and accounting services, HR operations, supply chain operations. And yes, American Express was the start of this journey. And I still remember, let me share a very small anecdote. I vividly remember having a conversation with my colleagues back in 1996 that if for any reason we were to leave American Express, we will not find another job in India. The reason being, who would want to employ a person with experience in back office accounting of Taiwan or Hong Kong or Malaysia or Japan or Australia? BPO term had not been coined at that stage. American Express was far ahead of the curve, so to say. On a more serious note, we've seen this journey play out multiple times in our careers, wherein a company starts a GCC journey with a cost focus, and then gradually, over a year or two, the cost center focused GCC grows into an investment center and a key enabler in the digital transformation journey of any company. As I said, two steps. First step of the journey involves setting up operations, training a new set of employees, not only on their specific jobs, but also on the core business of the company. As this team settles in, the experience and contextual knowledge that they start accumulating makes them a key participant and enabler in any change or improvement program of the company. This feeds into developing their contextual knowledge and understanding of the company. It kind of grows that knowledge till you reach a breaking point wherein the knowledge center itself shifts to the GCC. And this is the time when really the second step of the journey kicks in. And, availability of tech talent in India allows the GCC teams to take on increasingly complex projects for the company. And since almost all these processes are tech-enabled, the GCC teams evolve into digital disruption squads in the company. That's how I see them. And that's how we've seen this evolve, not once, but multiple times. Sorry, I went to the very long introduction.
No, no, no. You've done so much. This is a very small introduction. So thank you so much, Avarjit, for your introduction. And, following from the same thing, you were among the first leaders who joined American Express. When you rightly said the concept of GCCs was primarily seen as a back office operation. Over the years, we have witnessed a massive shift in the role. How GCCs have transitioned from being a mere cost centers to becoming a strategic enabler of digital transformation. You want to share a few things about your point of view on this? How do you see the transformation?
See, the way I've seen this evolve is, as I said, I've seen it in two steps. And again, I've seen most companies adopt the gradual process wherein knowledge, business knowledge, and contextual knowledge is accumulated over time. And then thought leadership for the process shifts to the GCC. Many companies have tried to speed up the process and not let it be gradual. They are more aggressive. They want to go in faster. It is mostly dependent on how structured or unstructured their processes are. The more structured the process, the faster and easier it is to shift the thought leadership to the GCC. The more unstructured, the more bespoke the processes, the tougher it is to move it to GCC. But the advantages far outweigh the disadvantages. If you have bespoke processes which are spread in a decentralized manner, the risk that the company is running is much higher. It makes sense, even if you have to move the bespoke processes, just move them as is and then standardize them or move them onto a standard technology solution that you've built up. And yes, we've seen so many examples. We've been through this so many times that it's something which works. It's something which our experience suggests that yes, this is the right path.
You worked with
Yeah.
such a large, brands, American Express, IBM, then TCS. So it's been a really a wonderful, journey. And all this while you've been involved in the business transformations. So, I would have the next question, which is relating to the digital disruption, which has been a field which you've been very close to. So, digital disruption is one of the biggest challenges companies are facing today. In what ways do you think GCCs, either directly or indirectly, help their parent organizations tackle these challenges?
Uh, let me share a couple of examples on how this has been done, and then it'll start making sense. Uh, you know, in accounting, one of the things which is very common in multinationals is intercompany accounting. Why? Because they have operations in multiple countries around the world, and between the different countries, their units will interact with each other and work with each other, and then cost needs to be transferred from one unit to another unit. Conceptually, it sounds very simple, but then when you are dealing with a company like American Express, which has operations around the world, these there are specific teams which are just focused on making sure that the intercompany reconciliations are cleared and are up to date. Now, when this process is sitting in all the different countries, it is bespoke, and there's a big challenge in coordination and communication and making sure that everything happens before the monthly close and so on and so forth. Step one in our journey was just to move all these processes into one center. So people sitting in one area were doing this work for multiple markets around the world. Communication became much easier. Coordination became much easier. Yes, there were initial challenges wherein the local markets wanted to keep a strong, very strong control on the work. So the communication had to go from the employee in India to the market, and then come back to the employee in India, and then go back to the respective market, and then come back to the employee in India. Very soon, we just cut all those threads and said, "Okay, guys, talk to each other and solve it." That was a solution wherein we relied more on physical proximity. And then, once you have the physical proximity built, then you start looking at technical solutions and say, okay, what can I do to smoothen out the process and what can I do to transform? The transformation in just a simple intercompany accounting is such that you can get anywhere up to 90% savings in headcount. So if you have a team of 100, you can get it down to a team of 10. And we've seen it happen.
Yeah, yeah. Not
So,
only what that Avarjit have also seen that clearing the intercompany account became much more important as well. Timely
yes,
there. Having getting those loans, intercompany transactions, getting it closed, and the headquarters accounting could close on time. We reduced the number
correct,
of days from
correct,
working
correct.
two
And
to working for three.
the unreconciled amounts, they became much smaller. With accounting, the balance sheet just improved so much. And while I was just focusing on the cost, thank you for pointing out that the balance sheet also became much cleaner, much leaner.
Yeah, I know you were also leading the closure, book closure, faster closure, real time faster, so that all the segmentation reporting could have been done. So I think that was really very good example. And I also heard a lot of focus when Amex got set up was to design the policies, which didn't exist. That late working, using women working at night, all these things did not exist, and all of these were something which you guys set it up.
Yes. So again, there were two aspects to it. The first aspect you rightly said was policies relating to working in India within the center. So, how do you transport people if you're transporting people and if you're transporting, especially if you're transporting ladies in the middle of the night, then there has to be a guard in the van and so on and so forth. The second aspect was also to standardize the policies, intercompany accounting policies across the globe, because they also had become very bespoke. And so opportunities to standardize, opportunities to streamline the processes existed everywhere. So that's how the journey started, and that's how the journey evolved.
No, thank you so much for this, Avajit. And I would like to, look at your latest role. That you have such an extensive experience leading large and complex transformation projects, especially your role as a head of shared services at Tata Consultancy Services. Could you share some examples of transformation projects with our audience you've led and the key takeaways from those experiences?
Sure, I may not be at a liberty to name the client, but let me just give you a broad picture. This was a very interesting project that we did in TCS. There was a merger between two pharma joint giants. So these are huge companies in the world, two of the largest, and they decided to merge. Great from a business perspective, but then the regulators step in, and especially regulators which are looking at anti-monopoly, and they're making sure that none of the businesses they become so dominant that there's no competition. Now, to get their approval, this new entity had to shed certain businesses. And these guys are large, right? So even if they shed their businesses, those businesses are worth a few $1 billion. They are not cheap. They're big. And if they're working to a deadline, it suddenly becomes a slump sale. They didn't want to do a slump sale. They wanted to get the best price in the market for the business because the businesses were good. It's just that because of the merger, they had to divest. So what they did was they worked with various private equity firms as well as potential buyers, but the best deals were available obviously from private equity players. But the private equity players did not have the wherewithal or the knowledge, the resources to run the business. So how do you do it? That's where we stepped in as partners and we said, okay, let's carve out the business into a new entity and run it as a separate company. Now, creating a legal entity and moving the business to the legal entity, transferring employees is the simpler stuff. The more complex stuff is how do you migrate the entire business systems, the processes, the technology. And that's where we stepped in as partners. So we first and foremost, we got the tech teams to develop to a very great extent mimic the ERP of the parent, but customize it for the new company. And then we have to build processes around the ERP and make sure that all the services that we provide could be delivered effectively through those processes. And we have to staff for those processes because these are back office processes where the employees did not move. And then we had to deliver as per the requirements so that the new company could run effectively as a business, which had effective tracking and reporting, including regulatory reporting. And this new business, new entity, then could be carved out of the parent, the giant, and sold to a new to a PE player. We did this successfully across various divestitures of the parent. And in some instances, we ran that business for 3 years before the PE player could find a new buyer who had a similar business and who could merge that business with their merge the new business with their existing business, and then um, sunset the new ERP and the new processes, or migrate everything onto the new ERP and new processes, whichever way they wanted to play. And 20-30 billion dollars of businesses we could run through this solution that was designed specifically for this giant. I'm told that subsequently this has become a standard practice, or this is being offered by other players as well. But this was one huge project and very interesting project at that.
Yeah, I remember this BOT, which was kind of, then Everest also covered it, and saying the kind of a model which has been designed has been really very remarkable. And I still remember I heard about it also, that you were talking to also some at point of time 30 plus CFOs because one of the acquirers had all the organization full of CFOs to say. But this was a good example, how the business outcomes are being generated through the the GCC type, which was being set up here for the acquirer. Anything else you want to share, Vajit, from your teacher's experience? Because there were very large projects that you had to handle.
See, there will always be there'll be always some business challenge or the other which is coming up to the clients because they're operating in an environment which is dynamic, which is complex. So our job was to make sure that we were one step ahead. We had the thought leadership, we had the knowledge, we had the contextual business knowledge to to devise or revise our processes such that we could support them in the new situation. And in one pharma multinational, this is another one now. We were doing invoice processing for them, and our focus was to make sure that we ran various projects to make sure that any late payment fees goes down to zero. Identify if any of the countries in any of the countries any banks are levying any bank charges, identify them and push back and get the accounting cleaned up. See, all these amounts, the late payment fees, the bank charges, etc., individually may seem to be very small. They don't amount to much. But then when you sum them up across a country, then across multiple countries in a geography, and across multiple months, they suddenly amount. They become larger amounts, and they become very, very interesting for the CFOs. And yes, there is a perpetual challenge in invoice payments as to how far can we go with automation and how can we make it all auto such that human intervention goes down. And I'm always reminded of the classic Ford example where they opened up their systems to their vendors such that the vendors log onto the Ford system and do everything on the Ford system, and end-to-end accounting and end-to-end payments, everything happens through that system. That seems utopian as of now, but that is the ultimate level to which everybody aims. Sorry, again, a very long-winded answer. I hope it makes sense to you and to your
No, no, no,
audience.
it is definitely. So thank you so much for this, Avajit. It's always, learn about things that we could do through the GCCs. The focus on innovation is must, because today we're not saying we are a cost center. We're talking about we are the business partners. So it's important for audience to understand what are the things that we could do. And today a lot of focus is on the AI, the digital innovation, and use some of these. So which is good to hear your experiences. So I would like to move little towards the cultural differences. People say, we are Indians, and we're talking to global teams with GCCs which are operating across different regions. Managing cultural differences within a global team can be a challenging. What are some effective strategies you have seen or implemented to bridge cultural gaps and to create a high performing global workforce?
Sure. This is a very interesting question, a very interesting topic. Let me first give an example. I whenever I work with a employee in India, I have to invest the first 2 minutes to 3 minutes interacting with that person at an individual level. How are you? What are you doing? What's happening in your life? Your children, your wife, your this, that. Just establish a quick connect. 2, 3 minutes, that's all. And after that, switch to business. And say, okay, now let's get where are we meeting and what do we need to do to, etc., and so on and so forth. When I'm dealing with my US team, it's the other way around. I have to start with business, first sort out the business part, and then towards the end, once I'm through with the business part, if I have 2 minutes, 3 minutes, then I say, hey, by the way, what else is happening? And then talk at a personal level. It's just it's a very small thing which at how you sequence things can make a difference. If you do it the other way around, the people in India, they will think that you're very work focused and not interested in them as individuals. You flip it for the team in the US. They will think that you're not. You first talk personal and then go business. They will think that you're not focused enough on business. So first step in the cultural, what should I say, acclimatization journey is to understand and appreciate each other's culture. That's the base. And our job as leaders is to help our teams understand the cultural differences. Once there's a basic appreciation, there's some appreciation that about cultural differences, then you figure out how do you soften things and how do you make it easier for teams to collaborate and work together. What I found is that having some team event helps tremendously. And I remember the initial days. I think most of us would have experienced it that, suddenly some bright spark by some bright soul would jump up in our teams and say, okay, this Friday we will do traditional Indian dressing. And you just say, come on, give me a break, yeah, no way. And yet, when you see everybody participating and enjoying themselves, and then you say, wow, yeah, this is kind of building the team and bringing the team together. And I've seen our folks from outside India who are visiting us also getting swept away with that spirit. They join in and they're also having that fun. So having some team events always helps. Team lunches, dinners. If the company is sponsoring it, then absolutely it is great. But even if it's a brown bag lunch, everybody's bringing their own food. At least once a week, if everybody sits together as a team and has their lunch or dinner, it's just the fact that you are sitting at the same table and eating food, it ignites an appreciation of each other as individuals, as human beings. And then this can be very easily leveraged to build a base for partnership. I think and for me, the next steps also there are two more aspects which I want to cover. First is when you are united through common goals, cultural appreciation of each other helps, but that underlying bedrock is always united through common goals. You're not working at cross purposes. And the related aspect is when you achieve successes, you get recognized as a team, both the teams in India and overseas. You get recognized as one team. Both those build a cultural appreciation of each other, and then cultural differences just get brushed aside and you work as one. It's a very smooth flow of information, smooth flow of work, and collaboration between the teams. Hope that helps.
So, how do you see also, Avarjit, in terms of the branding? Some of these companies are new, which are coming to India. So, how do you see that branding plays a very important role, and also, in retention of the, customers, of the employees? Sorry.
So branding plays a role. I agree. I think for me, the most important aspect is that if the GCCs are getting sponsorship from the senior most levels, from the C suite or one step down, one step below the C suites, then the message right across the company is that this is something that we want to do. And as a company, we're putting our resources behind it to make it happen. And the see, we are all human beings around the world. Um, Internal politics, bureaucracy, all of that comes in along with the fact that, the very moment we say that we are human beings and we try and work together, bureaucracy and politics comes in along with it. But the moment you have sponsorship coming in from the senior most levels, this politics and bureaucracy takes a back seat and people find ways of working together and making things happen, making it easier for the new GCC to come up, helping the teams come up the learning curve, and then once they've developed their knowledge, once they have become somewhat of an expert, then leveraging them. You've created an asset. If you don't leverage it, again, it'll wither away, people will go away, there'll be disillusion. As long as you have that simple focus, then the asset that you've created will be leveraged by the company and the company will stand to gain. So from my perspective, the key message is that um, GCC globalize you in a way that nothing else can. And you can start with the simple stuff like standardization of processes or something more complex, whatever. They will deliver provided the investment in people and resources match with the expectation, with the requirement, and if there is adequate sponsorship.
I also
From
heard,
my
yeah, sorry about. So I also heard a lot about Avajit, the cultural sensitivity training, which American Express used to give it to all its employees before you used to
yes,
go, and that used to be definitely a big, I would say, an asset which was created and really appreciated by the stakeholders.
and that's right. And as I said, this is both ways. Um, it's not just the teams in India and the GCC who need to be culturally sensitive. It's even the teams which are not in the GCC which need to be sensitive, culturally attuned to understand and work together with the GCC and be in a position to exploit all the advantages, all the strengths that the GCC brings to them. So it's a two-way street. You're absolutely right.
Well, thank you for this, Avajit. Before we wrap up, what key message would you like to leave for the upcoming emerging leaders and the professionals in the global capability center space? Any insights or advice that could help them navigate this evolving landscape?
Sure. For the teams in the GCC, all I can say is it's a very interesting journey, great fun. You will learn a lot, and most importantly, you will become a global citizen. For for the teams outside the GCC, for the companies, and especially for the C-suite and their direct reports, I think my key message, as I said a few minutes back, GCCs will globalize you in a way that nothing else can. This is your best tool for globalization, and you will need sponsorship as well as involvement from the senior most levels to make them successful. They will flourish, they will grow, and they will really be your lifeline to invigorate your company and use them wisely. That's all.
Yeah. And Avajit, how do you see digitalization, the ML, RPA, AI combinations being used overall in GCCs Do you see this trend, continuing?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. These are all tools which are there for us to leverage. I think the advantage of having all those processes in the GCC is that you have enough volume, enough mass to experiment with these tools. And if any one of them improves your efficiency by 5%, 10%, because the volumes are huge, the mass is huge, the benefit that you get out of it is also huge. So the cost benefit analysis works in your favor. And I remember way back, and this is I'm talking of the American Express time, 1996, 97, 98, which is very, very early days. We didn't have these fancy tools. Yet, because the volume, all the mass was centralized in one place, we could develop tools in New Delhi, in India, which were then deployed across the American Express universe to standardize and automate processes. And things which were, when they were being done in different countries, the volume was so small that no tool could ever be justified. And I'm talking about things like reconciliations, things like back office processes which support the cashier's teams. So very small processes per se in the overall scope of things, but the moment you globalize them, the volumes are large enough to justify implementation of a tool, implementation of automation. And that's where your RPAs, AI, ML, all of that comes in, and those are tools which are there for us to leverage.
No, thank you so much, Avarjit, and thanks for sharing your incredible journey and the valuable insights with us. It was truly a pleasure to have this conversation with you. And to our listeners, thank you for tuning in to this special episode of Boom of Bharat. If you enjoyed this conversation, don't forget to subscribe for more insights into the ideas and innovations shaping our world. We would also love to hear your thoughts. You can connect with me on LinkedIn at SRK Game Changers or drop your questions on our website. Until next time, stay curious, stay innovative, and keep making an impact. Namaste.